They say respect is earned, not given. But what happens when the person who should respect you the most is the one who destroys you in front of everyone? What happens when your hard work becomes a joke and your dedication becomes a punchline? That's when you realize some people don't deserve your loyalty. They deserve a lesson they'll never forget. My name is Alex Carter, and for 7 years, I was the invisible force behind tech core industries. I wasn't the CEO. I wasn't the face on magazine covers or the voice in boardrooms. I was the architect, the ghost in the machine, the one who built the systems that made billions flow through that company like water through pipes. When I joined TechCore fresh out of college, it was a struggling startup with big dreams and bigger debts. Marcus Donovan, the CEO, was charismatic and ambitious. He had the vision, he said, but vision without execution is just fantasy. And that's where I came in. I remember my first day. Marcus looked at me across his cluttered desk and said, "Alex, I don't need someone who follows instructions. I need someone who solves problems I don't even know exist yet." I nodded, young and eager, ready to prove myself. And prove myself I did. Over the next 7 years, I built everything. The proprietary trading algorithm that predicted market shifts with terrifying accuracy. The automated risk management system that saved the company from 3 potential crashes. The secure data architecture that handled client information for Fortune 500 companies. Every line of code, every system integration, every late-night debugging session. It was all me. But here's the thing about being brilliant behind the scenes. Nobody sees you. Nobody knows your name. And when success comes, everyone assumes it was always meant to be. Marcus got richer. The company grew. We went from 20 employees to 2,000. From 1 office to 15 locations worldwide. And my salary? It grew too, but not like his. Not like the executives who smiled and shook hands while I kept the entire operation running. I didn't mind at first. I loved the work. I loved solving impossible problems. I loved the quiet satisfaction of knowing that without me, none of this existed. But there's a difference between being humble and being invisible. And I was about to learn that difference the hard way. It was a Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. Marcus had called an emergency meeting of the entire tech department. 50 engineers, developers, and analysts crammed into the main conference room. I sat in the back, as usual, my laptop open. Half listening, while finishing a critical security patch, Marcus stood at the front. His expensive suit perfectly tailored, his smile wide and confident. "Everyone, I want to talk about our biggest deal yet. Silverton Enterprises. $400 million. They want to integrate our systems into their entire global operation." The room erupted in excited whispers. 400 million. It was the deal that would change everything. Marcus continued. But there's a catch. Silverton's tech team wants to audit our code. Every system, every algorithm, every line. His eyes swept the room. They want to make sure we're worth the investment. My heart raced. This was it. This was the moment my work would finally be recognized. 7 years of invisible brilliance were about to step into the spotlight. His tone shifting. "I've been reviewing our core systems, and I've got to be honest with you all." He paused for effect. "Some of this code is problematic." My fingers froze on the keyboard. Problematic? He clicked to a presentation slide. My code. My trading algorithm. The one that had made the company hundreds of millions? "Look at this," Marcus said, pointing at the screen. "This is supposed to be our crown jewel. But it's messy. It's inefficient. Honestly, it looks like it was written by someone who barely passed their coding classes." Laughter rippled through the room. Not loud, but enough. Enough to feel like daggers in my chest. I sat up straighter, my face burning. That algorithm had taken me 2 years to perfect. It was elegant, efficient, and revolutionary. And he was calling it messy? "I mean, look at this function here," Marcus continued, zooming in. "Who writes code like this anymore? It's outdated, clunky, amateur hour." More laughter. Someone whispered, "Whose code is that anyway?" I wanted to stand up. I wanted to defend myself. But my voice caught in my throat. This couldn't be happening. Marcus clicked to another slide. My risk management system. And this. Don't even get me started. The logic is all over the place. If Silverton sees this, they'll think we're running our operation out of someone's garage. The room was laughing now. Really laughing. My hands were shaking. 7 years. 7 years of my life reduced to a punchline in a boardroom full of people who couldn't write a simple sorting algorithm. If their lives depended on it, then Marcus said the words that changed everything. We need to completely rewrite these systems before the audit. I'm bringing in a team of real experts. Consultants from Silicon Valley who actually know what they're doing. He paused, then added with a smirk, because clearly whoever built this was way out of their depth.
The meeting ended.
People filed out, still chuckling, already gossiping about the amateur code that nearly ruined the company's biggest deal. And me. I sat there, alone in that emptying conference room, staring at my screen. 7 years. And he didn't even know it was my code. Or worse, maybe he did. Maybe he knew exactly whose work he was destroying. Maybe that was the point. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to defend myself. I was going to do something much more powerful. I was going to teach Marcus Donovan a lesson about respect, about value, about what happens when you mock the person holding your entire world together. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about destruction. It's about revelation. And Marcus was about to learn exactly what he'd lost. Have you ever been so angry that everything becomes perfectly clear? Like all the fog in your mind just burns away and suddenly you see everything for what it really is? That's what happened to me in the days after that meeting. I wasn't just angry. I was awake. I went home that night, and I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, staring at my monitors, replaying every word Marcus had said. Amateur hour? Out of their depth. Real experts. And then it hit me. He hadn't just insulted my code. He'd revealed something much more dangerous. He had no idea how his own company worked. Marcus Donovan, the celebrated CEO, the face on business magazines, the man who gave TED Talks about innovation. He didn't understand the technology that built his empire. He saw numbers and results, but he didn't see the foundation. He didn't see me, and if he didn't see me, he certainly didn't see the power I held. Over the next week, I did something I should have done years ago. I audited everything, not the systems, not the code, the contracts, the documentation, the legal structure of every system I'd built, and what I found was beautiful in its simplicity. Every major system in TechCore, every algorithm, every piece of critical infrastructure, was all documented under my name. My personal developer credentials were embedded in every repository. My digital signature was on every major update. And the most beautiful part, according to my employment contract, any proprietary code I developed remained under joint intellectual property rights. I remember reading that clause in my original contract 7 years ago. Marcus had insisted on it. We're partners, Alex, he'd said. Your code, our platform, we succeed together. I'd been too young and too trusting to question it. But now it was the key to everything. See, Marcus had made a critical mistake. In his rush to grow the company, he'd never restructured those original contracts. He'd never reassigned IP rights as the company evolved. He'd assumed loyalty would keep people like me in place forever. He'd assumed I'd never question, never push back, never realize my own value. He was wrong. I started documenting everything. Every system I'd built, every critical function, every dependency. The trading algorithm that generated 40% of company revenue. The risk management system that protected billions in assets? Mine. The client data architecture that secured our relationships with Fortune 500 companies. All mine. But I wasn't stupid. I knew I couldn't just walk away or make demands. That would be obvious. Messy. Legal teams would get involved. Things would drag out. No, if I was going to do this, it had to be surgical. Precise. Devastating. I needed to wait for the perfect moment. Marcus was about to hand it to me on a silver platter. The Silverton audit was scheduled for 3 weeks away. Marcus had indeed brought in a consulting team. 5 developers from a prestigious Silicon Valley firm, each one charging more per hour than I made in a week.
Oh.
They arrived with expensive laptops and confident smirks, ready to fix the mess they'd been told about. I watched them for the first few days. They'd sit in conference rooms, reviewing my code, pointing at screens, discussing improvements. I'd walk past and hear fragments of their conversations. The architecture is actually solid. This algorithm is pretty sophisticated. Whoever wrote this knew what they were doing, but in the official reports they sent to Marcus, different story. Significant improvements needed, modernization required, complete restructure recommended. They were playing the game, stretching the project out. Maximizing their billable hours, Marcus was eating it up. 2 weeks before the audit, Marcus called another meeting, this time just the senior staff and the consulting team. I wasn't invited, but Jennifer, my only real friend in the company, was there. She was the CFO, one of the few people who actually understood what I did. She found me later that day in my office. She looked worried. "Alex, we need to talk." "Let me guess," I said, not looking up from my screen. "The consultants need more time. It's worse than that." She closed the door and sat down. "Marcus is planning to let you go after the Silverton deal closes." My hand stopped moving on the keyboard. "What?" "He thinks you're a liability now. Consultants have been telling him that the old systems are technical debt and that the company needs to move in a new direction. They've convinced him that rebuilding everything from scratch is the only way forward. And in that new vision," she paused, "there's no place for you." I leaned back in my chair, processing this. 7 years, and this was how it ended. Not with recognition, not with gratitude, with elimination. "When?" I asked quietly.
Out of the audit.
"Once Silverton signs, he's going to restructure the entire tech department. You'll be offered a severance package. He's already talked to legal about it." I nodded slowly. "How much time do I have?" "The audit is in 2 weeks. The deal closes a week after that if everything goes well." She looked at me with genuine concern. "I'm so sorry, Alex. You deserved better than this." "I know," I said, and I did know. Also knew exactly what I was going to do about it. That night, I put my plan into motion. It's not a plan of destruction, not a plan of sabotage, a plan of revelation, a plan that would teach Marcus exactly what happens when you throw away the foundation of your empire. I started with documentation. I created a comprehensive technical report detailing every system I'd built, every dependency, every critical function. I outlined exactly how each piece of code worked, and more importantly, what would happen if it stopped working. It was a masterpiece of technical writing. Clear, detailed, irrefutable. Then I did something clever. I activated a feature I'd built into the core systems years ago, a feature I called the handshake. It was a verification protocol that required my personal authentication key to run certain critical functions. I'd built it as a security measure, a way to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive systems. But it had another purpose. My key was ever revoked or removed. The systems would enter a safe mode. Safe mode meant they'd still run, they'd still function. But certain advanced features would lock. The trading algorithm would still work, but its predictive accuracy would drop from 95% to about 60%. The risk management system would still operate, but it would flag false positives constantly, requiring manual review for every single transaction. The data architecture would still secure information, but processing speeds would slow to a crawl. Nothing would break. Nothing would crash. Everything would just become difficult, inefficient, expensive. Exactly what Marcus had accused my code of being. And here's the beautiful part. I'd never mentioned the handshake to anyone. It was buried deep in the code, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The consultants hadn't found it. Marcus didn't know it existed. And in 5 days, when I walked out of TechCore for the last time, it would activate automatically. But I needed one more thing. I needed leverage. Real leverage.
Out.
And I found it in the most obvious place. The Silverton contract itself. I'd been reviewing the technical requirements Silverton had sent over. They were specific. It's very specific. They wanted our exact systems, our exact algorithms. They'd done their homework. They knew what made TechCore valuable. And those systems, The ones Marcus was about to rewrite? Those were the systems Silverton was buying. If TechCore showed up to that audit with completely different code, Silverton would walk away. $400 million gone, and Marcus, he'd finally understand what he'd destroyed. I worked through the night, preparing everything. Documents, reports, backups, evidence. I wasn't going to threaten him. I was just going to let reality teach the lesson. 3 days before the audit, I got the email. Marcus wanted to see me. First thing Monday morning, I knew what it was. The conversation, the severance offer, and the polite dismissal. I smiled as I read the email. He had no idea. No idea that in 72 hours, his perfect plan was going to collapse. No idea that the code he'd mocked was the only thing standing between him and complete disaster. No idea that the person he'd humiliated was about to become the most important person in his entire company. I clicked reply and typed a single line, "I'll be there." Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you take, but you let them lose. Monday morning arrived like Judgment Day. I'd barely slept the entire weekend, but I wasn't tired. I was sharp, focused, ready. I dressed carefully that morning, not too formal, not too casual. I wanted to look exactly like what I was, someone who knew their worth. I arrived at TechCore at 8:30. Marcus's assistant told me he'd see me at 9, so I waited, sat in the lobby, watching employees hurry past, none of them knowing that the entire company was standing on the edge of a cliff. At 9 sharp, I was called up. Marcus's office was on the 20th floor, all glass walls and downtown views. The kind of office that screamed success. I wondered if he'd remember what my office looked like. The basement corner with no windows and flickering fluorescent lights. "Alex, come in. Come in." Marcus was all smiles, like we were old friends, like he hadn't spent the last month destroying my reputation. "Have a seat. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine," I said, sitting across from him. His desk was massive, made of dark wood that probably cost more than my car. Good, good. He leaned back in his leather chair. "So, Alex, I wanted to talk to you about the future. The company's evolving, you know. We're entering a new phase. It's the Silverton deal, the expansion. Everything's changing." I nodded, saying nothing. Let him talk, and with change comes difficult decisions. He paused, trying to look sympathetic. "Alex, you've been with us a long time. 7 years. That's loyalty. That's dedication. And we appreciate that. We really do." Here it comes, I thought. But the reality is, the technical landscape has shifted. The old ways of doing things, they don't work anymore. We need fresh perspectives, new blood. And that means making room for the next generation of talent. "You're letting me go?" I said flatly. He looked almost relieved that I'd said it for him. "We're offering you a very generous severance package. 6 months' salary, full benefits through the end of the year. And a positive reference. You'll land on your feet, Alex. Someone with your experience, you'll find something new in no time." I let the silence hang for a moment. Then I asked, "Have the consultants finished rewriting my code?" He shifted in his seat. "They're making excellent progress.
How?
The new systems will be ready for the Silverton audit. Everything's on schedule." "Is it?" I pulled out my phone and opened a document, because I did some research this weekend. The Silverton contract has very specific technical requirements. They want our exact systems, the ones currently running. The ones you've been calling amateur hour. Marcus frowned. "Consultants are building improved versions. Silverton will get even better systems than they expected." "Will they?" I slid my phone across the desk so he could see the screen. "This is the technical appendix from the Silverton contract. Section 12, paragraph 4. Read it." He picked up the phone, his eyes scanning the text. I watched his face as he read. Watched the confusion, then the concern, and the fear. The paragraph was clear. Silverton Enterprises was purchasing access to TechCore's proprietary systems as they currently existed, with all current functionality and performance metrics. Any significant changes to core architecture would require renegotiation of terms and pricing. "The consultants have been rewriting everything from scratch," I said calmly. "That means in 3 days, when Silverton's technical team arrives too. Audit your systems, they won't find what they're expecting. They'll find something completely different. And according to this contract, they can walk away. Marcus set down the phone. The new systems will be better. Once we explain, Marcus, they don't want better. They want what you have, what you promised them. What I built. I leaned forward. Do you even know what makes those systems valuable? You understand how the trading algorithm works? Can you explain the risk management logic? You know what dependencies exist between the data architecture and the client interfaces? Silence was answer enough. You don't, I continued, because you never asked. You never cared. As long as the money kept flowing, the details didn't matter. But now the details are everything. And the person who knows every single detail, every line of code, every system integration, you're about to fire him. Marcus's jaw tightened. Are you threatening me, Alex? No, I said honestly. I'm just pointing out reality. You want me gone? Fine. I'll take your severance package and leave. But when I walk out that door, I take my knowledge with me. And when Silverton's team starts asking technical questions that your consultants can't answer, when they start digging into the code and realize it's all been replaced, when they start wondering why the system they're testing doesn't match the system they agreed to buy, I shrugged. That's not my problem anymore. He stared at me, and I could see his mind racing, calculating, realizing. But that's not even the interesting part, I continued. The interesting part is what happens after I leave. See? I built in some security features over the years. Authentication protocols. Verification systems. They're designed to prevent unauthorized access, but they have a side effect. If my access credentials are revoked, if I'm removed from the system, certain advanced functions lock down. Nothing breaks. Nothing crashes, but performance degrades. Significantly. Color drained from Marcus's face. You put a kill switch in the code? Not a kill switch? A security protocol? It's in all my documentation. It's in the technical specs I filed with the legal department. It's completely above board. But yes, if I'm no longer an authorized user of the systems I've built, those systems protect themselves. Safe mode. Reduced functionality. Manual overrides required for every major operation. That's sabotage, Marcus stammered. No, that's security. You want to accuse me of sabotage? You'll have to explain to your board and to Silverton why you fired the person who built and maintains the systems that generate 40% of your revenue. You'll have to explain why you never bothered to understand your own technology. You'll have to explain why you let consultants rewrite critical systems days before the most important audit in company history. I stood up, but like I said, not my problem. You want me gone? I'm gone. I'll accept your severance package. I'll walk out that door. And I'll watch the Silverton deal collapse from a safe distance. Or, Marcus asked, his voice strained, or you could reconsider. You could admit that maybe, just maybe, you made a mistake. You could recognize that the code you mocked is the code that built this company. That the systems you called amateur are the systems Silverton wants to buy for $400 million. That the person you were about to discard is the person you can't afford to lose. I walked to the door, then paused. The audit is in 3 days, Marcus. The consultants can't finish in time. Even if they could, Silverton won't accept the changes. You need the original systems, which means you need me. You decide how this goes. I walked out, leaving him sitting at his massive desk, surrounded by symbols of success built on work he didn't understand and didn't appreciate. And then I waited. Because the best part of revenge isn't the confrontation. It's watching them realize they've already lost. The silence was deafening. For exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes, I heard nothing from Marcus. I sat at my desk in that windowless basement office, going through files, organizing documentation, preparing for whatever came next. My phone sat on the desk, silent. My email, empty of anything important. Then, at exactly 1:17 p.m., everything exploded. My office door burst open. Marcus stood there, and he wasn't alone. Jennifer, the CFO, was with him. So was Robert Chen, the company's head legal counsel. And behind them, looking absolutely furious, was David Morrison, the lead consultant from Silicon Valley. Conference room. "Now," Marcus said. His voice was controlled, but I could hear the rage underneath. Good. He was starting to understand. I stood slowly, grabbed my laptop, and followed them. We walked through the office in silence, and I noticed people watching. Word had spread. Something was happening. The invisible tech guy was being marched to a meeting with the CEO and lawyers. In corporate America, it's never good. The conference room was the same one where Marcus had humiliated me 3 weeks ago. Poetic, I thought. We all sat down. Marcus at the head of the table. The lawyers on one side, me on the other. Alone, Marcus spoke first. "I've spent the last 4 hours reviewing your personnel file, your contracts, and your documentation with our legal team. I've also had a very interesting conversation with Mr. Morrison here about the state of his team's work." David Morrison looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "The rewrite is more complex than we anticipated," he said carefully. "Integrating with the existing data structures while maintaining backward compatibility has proven they can't finish in time." Marcus interrupted. 3 days. "We have 3 days until the Silverton audit, and the new systems aren't ready." "Won't be ready." I said nothing. Just waited. Robert Chen, the lawyer, cleared his throat. "Alex, we need to discuss your claims about the authentication protocols. You stated that removing your credentials would impact system performance." "It's not a claim," I said calmly. "It's documented. I can show you exactly where in the code the security protocols are implemented. I can show you the technical specifications I filed. I can show you the email I sent to the previous CTO 4 years ago explaining the system. It's all there. You just never looked." Jennifer spoke up. "Alex, help me understand something. Why build something like that in the first place? Why create a system that depends on your personal credentials?" "Because I was the only senior developer for 3 years," I explained. "When I built those systems, I was a team of one. The authentication wasn't about control. It was about security. If I was hit by a bus, if something happened to me, the systems needed a way to prevent unauthorized access until a proper handover could happen. It was responsible engineering. The problem is, no one ever did the handover. No one ever bothered to migrate the authentication structure as the company grew, because no one paid attention to how anything actually worked." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "This is blackmail, Alex. You're holding the company hostage." "No," I said firmly. "Blackmail would be if I threatened to damage something unless you paid me. I haven't damaged anything. I haven't threatened anything. I simply pointed out that if you remove me from the system, the security protocols I built will activate. That's not a threat. That's a consequence. There's a difference." "You could deactivate those protocols right now," Marcus countered. "You could give us full access. You could transfer everything over." "I could," I agreed. "But why would I? You've made it clear I'm not valued here. You humiliated me in front of my peers. You hired consultants to replace my work. You were about to fire me, and now, suddenly you need me. So let me ask you, Marcus, what exactly are you offering?" The room went silent. This was it. The moment everything hinged on. Jennifer spoke carefully. "Alex, what do you want?" I'd spent the entire weekend thinking about this answer. I could demand money. I could demand a promotion. I could demand a public apology. But I'd realized something important. I didn't want to stay at TechCore. Not long term. Marcus had shown me exactly what he thought of me. And that kind of disrespect doesn't disappear just, because circumstances change. But I could make sure this never happened to anyone else. And I could make sure Marcus learned his lesson properly. "I want 3 things," I said. "First, a new contract. Not as an employee, as a contractor. I'll help you through the Silverton audit and transition. 3 months. Payment of $2 million, half up front, half upon successful completion of the deal." Marcus's eyes widened. $2 million, that's 5% of what you're making from Silverton," I interrupted. 5% of a deal that doesn't happen without me. Seems fair. What else? Robert asked, taking notes. "Second, I want a formal acknowledgement in the Silverton presentation. My systems, my work, My contribution. Not hidden. Not buried. Credited. The technical team at Silverton should know who built what they're buying. Absolutely not, Marcus said. That makes us look weak. Like we're dependent on one person. You're dependent on one person? I said coldly. Me. And they're going to find that out during the audit anyway. Better to be honest up front. Shows integrity. Shows you value your people. Spin it right. It's a strength, not a weakness. Jennifer nodded slowly. He's right. We can position this as having deep technical expertise in-house, not relying on outsourced solutions. Marcus looked furious, but he didn't argue further. And the third thing? This was the important one. Third, I want a formal technical review process implemented at TechCore. Before any senior technical employee can be terminated, before any major system can be redesigned, there has to be a review by an independent technical panel. No more decisions made by people who don't understand the technology. No more developers thrown away because management doesn't appreciate what they built. That's completely unreasonable, Marcus sputtered. That's giving the tech department veto power over business decisions.
Oh.
I corrected. It's giving the tech department a voice in technical decisions. If you want to fire someone, fire them for performance issues, for cultural fit, for business reasons, but not because you don't understand their work. And if you want to rewrite critical systems, fine, but do it with full understanding of what you're changing and why. Do it right. Robert looked at Marcus. That's actually not a bad policy. Could prevent legal issues down the road. Could prevent exactly this situation from happening again. You're seriously considering this? Marcus looked around the table in disbelief. He's blackmailing us, and you're negotiating? Marcus, Jennifer said quietly, we need him for the Silverton deal. We both know that. The audit is in 3 days. The consultants can't deliver. And if Alex walks away right now, we lose $400 million. His terms are actually reasonable given the circumstances. Given the circumstances he created. Marcus shouted. No, I said, my voice hard. Given the circumstances you created when you publicly mocked my work, when you hired people to replace me without ever asking if I wanted to improve the systems, when you decided I was disposable, despite 7 years of building your company, I didn't create this situation, Marcus. I just stopped pretending it didn't exist. The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus stared at me and I stared back. This was the moment. Either he'd accept reality, or he'd let his pride destroy the deal. Finally, Robert spoke. Marcus, we need a decision. The audit is in 3 days. Marcus's jaw worked. I could see the war happening behind his eyes. Pride versus pragmatism. Ego versus survival. And finally, with visible effort, he nodded. Fine, draft the contract. 3 months. But after that, you're gone. After that, I agreed. I wouldn't stay if you begged me. The meeting ended. Contracts were drafted. Papers were signed. And just like that, Invisible Tech Guy became the most expensive contractor in company history. But the real test was still coming. The Silverton audit. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to prove that my systems were everything I claimed they were. 3 days to show Marcus exactly what happens when you finally appreciate the foundation you built your empire on. I walked back to my office. Past staring colleagues, past whispering executives, past David Morrison and his team of consultants who were packing up their expensive laptops. Their services no longer required. And I smiled. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about making them realize what they almost destroyed. It's about teaching them the value of what they took for granted. Marcus wanted to see me gone. Fine. But first, he'd watch me save his company. And he'd pay me $2 million for the privilege. The next 3 days were a blur. Not of panic, but of precision. Once the contracts were signed, once everyone understood the stakes, something shifted. Marcus stayed out of my way. The consultants were dismissed. And for the first time in 7 years, I was given the resources, the respect, and the authority to do my job properly. I assembled a small team. 5 developers I trusted. People who'd worked with me over the years, who understood the systems, who'd been just as overlooked as I had been. Together, we prepared for the Silverton audit like we were preparing for war. We documented everything. Every system, every function, every performance metric. We created presentations, demos, and technical specifications that were flawless. We prepared answers for every possible question, and we rehearsed until we could explain the most complex algorithms in simple, clear language. Jennifer checked in with me each day. "You sure you're ready?" she asked on the morning of the audit. "I've been ready for 7 years," I told her. "I just finally have a chance to show it." The Silverton team arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. 8 people. Technical experts, security specialists, and their CTO. A woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who'd built 2 successful tech companies before joining Silverton. These weren't people you could fool. These were people who knew their stuff. Marcus greeted them in the lobby, all smiles and confidence. I watched from a distance, noting how he'd suddenly discovered humility. "Our technical team is the best in the business," he told them. "And our lead architect, Alex Carter, will be walking you through everything personally." A title I'd never officially held. But now, when it mattered, suddenly I was essential. The audit began in the main conference room. I stood at the front, my team beside me, facing the Silverton experts. Dr. Chen sat in the center, her sharp eyes taking in everything. "Let's start with the trading algorithm," she said. "Your performance metrics are impressive, almost too impressive. We want to understand how it works." This was the moment. The moment my work finally spoke for itself. I pulled up the first presentation and began. I explained the algorithm, not with jargon, but with clarity. I showed them the logic, the data structures, the learning mechanisms. I demonstrated how it adapted to market changes in real time. I walked them through edge cases and fail-safes. And when they asked questions, I answered without hesitation. An hour passed. Then, too, Dr. Chen asked increasingly technical questions, testing me, probing for weaknesses. I answered every single one. "The risk management system," she said next. "Show me how it handles cascading failures."
Halted.
I showed them simulations. I demonstrated the multi-layered protection protocols. I explained the decision trees and probability matrices, and I watched as her expression changed from skepticism to genuine interest. 3 hours into the audit, Dr. Chen held up a hand. "Stop," she said. "I need to confer with my team." My heart pounded. This was it. Either we'd passed or we'd failed. Marcus, sitting in the back of the room, looked pale. The Silverton team stepped out into the hallway. 10 minutes passed. 15. 20. Finally, they returned. Dr. Chen looked at me, then at Marcus, then back at me. "Mr. Carter, in 20 years of evaluating technology companies, I have rarely seen systems this sophisticated combined with this level of understanding from the development team. Your work is exceptional." The room exhaled. Marcus's shoulders dropped with relief. My team grinned at each other. But Dr. Chen wasn't finished. "However, I do have concerns," she continued. "And they're not technical." She turned to Marcus. "Mr. Donovan, we did our homework before coming here. We spoke to industry contacts. We heard rumors about internal restructuring, about consultants being brought in to rewrite your core systems, about tensions in your technical department." Marcus's face went red. "That was just, we were exploring options for optimization. You were going to replace the systems we're buying," Dr. Chen said bluntly. "Days before this audit. If that had happened, this deal would have ended before it began." She looked at me again. "Mr. Carter, I understand you recently transitioned from employee to contractor. 3-month contract. Is that correct?" "Yes," I said carefully. "And after those 3 months?" I glanced at Marcus, then back at her. "I'll be pursuing other opportunities." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "Then we have a problem. Because Silverton isn't just buying your systems, Mr. Carter. We're buying the expertise to maintain and evolve them. If the architect who built everything is leaving in 3 months, that changes our risk assessment significantly." The room went silent. Marcus looked like he'd been punched. This was the consequence he hadn't considered. You can't just replace the foundation of your company and expect no one to notice. However, Dr. Chen continued, we have a potential solution. Silverton Enterprises would like to offer you a position, Mr. Carter, head of systems architecture. You'd oversee the integration of tech core systems into our infrastructure and lead the development of next-generation solutions. Salary, benefits, and equity package to be discussed. But I can tell you, it would be substantially more than you're currently making. I felt my team staring at me. Felt Marcus's eyes burning into my back. This was the offer, the way out. The recognition I deserved all along, coming from someone who actually understood what I'd built. I appreciate that, Dr. Chen, I said slowly. But I need to think about it. I have commitments to fulfill here first, she smiled. Of course. Take your time. But know that the offer stands. Talent like yours shouldn't be wasted. She turned back to Marcus. Mr. Donovan, pending final legal review, Silverton is prepared to move forward with the acquisition. But we'll be including some additional terms in the contract. Specifically, requirements for technical continuity and knowledge transfer protocols. We need assurance that the expertise behind these systems will be available during the transition period, regardless of personnel changes. Marcus nodded weakly. Of course. Whatever you need, the audit concluded. Papers were signed. Hands were shaken. And the Silverton team left with confidence that they were buying something real, something valuable, something built by people who knew what they were doing. As the conference room emptied, Marcus approached me. We stood there, the CEO and the contractor who used to be his invisible employee. And the power dynamic had completely reversed. You planned this, Marcus said quietly. The timing, the leverage, the performance. You orchestrated everything. No, I corrected. You orchestrated everything. I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening. There's a difference. I made a mistake, he admitted. I should have valued you more. Should have recognized your contributions. Should have asked, I interrupted. Before you mocked my work in front of 50 people, you should have asked whose work it was. Before you hired consultants to replace me, you should have asked if I wanted to improve the systems myself. Before you decided to fire me, you should have asked what I actually meant to this company. But you didn't ask. Because you didn't see me. And that's the real problem. Marcus. Not that you made one mistake, but that you made the same mistake for 7 years? He looked down. Are you taking the Silverton offer? I don't know yet, I said honestly. What I do know is that I'm finishing my contract here. 3 months. I'll make sure the transition is smooth. I'll make sure your new technical team understands the systems. I'll make sure Tech Core is stable. Because unlike you, I don't abandon my work just because I'm angry and the policy changes. He asked, the technical review process you demanded? That's not negotiable. You signed the contract. It's policy now. And honestly, it should have always been policy. Maybe if it had been, we wouldn't be here. Marcus nodded slowly. Then he did something I didn't expect. He extended his hand. I'm sorry, Alex. Truly, I failed you as a leader. I won't make that mistake again. I looked at his hand for a long moment. Part of me wanted to refuse it. To let him stand there with his hand out, feeling the rejection I'd felt for years. But revenge isn't about becoming like the people who hurt you. It's about being better. I shook his hand. Make sure you don't, I said. Because the next person you underestimate might not be as forgiving. The next 3 months were different. I had an office with windows. My team had proper resources. My opinions were sought in meetings. My name appeared in company communications. All the recognition I deserved for 7 years suddenly materialized. Circumstances forced it to, but it felt hollow. Because real respect isn't something you get when someone needs you. Real respect is something you give freely to people who earn it, regardless of whether you need them in that moment. I did my job. I trained the new technical lead, a brilliant young developer named Priya, who reminded me of myself 7 years ago. I made sure she understood not just the code, but the why behind it. The decisions, the trade-offs, the evolution of each system. Why are you doing this? She asked me one day. You're leaving. You could just let them figure it out themselves. Because you deserve better than I got, I told her. You deserve to understand the systems you're inheriting. You deserve to have the knowledge to defend your work when someone questions it. You deserve to start ahead, not behind. I also made sure the technical review policy was implemented properly. Real documentation, real processes, real oversight. Not perfect, but better. A foundation for something healthier. The Silverton deal closed in week 8. $400 million. Stock prices jumped. Marcus gave interviews talking about innovation and technical excellence. He even mentioned me by name once. Alex Carter, whose brilliant systems architecture made this deal possible. It's too little too late, but at least it was something. Dr. Chen reached out to me regularly. The Silverton offer remained open. Think about it, she'd say. We value builders. We value people who create things that last. That's you. And I did think about it. A lot. On my last day at TechCore, my team threw me a small party. Not the big corporate farewell with cake and speeches. Just us. The people who'd been in the trenches. The people who understood what we'd built together. What are you going to do? One of them asked. I honestly don't know, I said. Maybe take the Silverton offer. Maybe start my own company. Maybe take a year off and figure out what I actually want. Whatever you do, Priya said, don't disappear. Don't be invisible again. The world needs to see what you can do. I left TechCore that evening as the sun was setting. Walked out of that building for the last time, carrying a box with 7 years of memories, and felt ... free, not triumphant, not bitter. Just free. Marcus caught me at the elevator. Alex, wait. I turned. He looked older than he had 3 months ago, tired. I learned something, he said. These past few months, about leadership, about respect, about really seeing the people who make things work. I know I can't undo what happened, but I want you to know that you changed this company. Not just with your code, with your courage to stand up and demand better. The technical review process, it's already making a difference. People feel heard, valued. That's because of you. It's not about me, I said. It's about creating a place where the next person like me doesn't have to fight to be seen. Where talent is recognized before it's desperate. Where respect is given, not extracted. I know, he said. And I promise you, that's what TechCore will become. I nodded. Good. Because that's your legacy, Marcus. Not the deals. Not the money. How you treat the people who build things for you. That's what people will remember. The elevator arrived. I stepped in. As the doors closed, I saw Marcus standing there, finally understanding the lesson I'd spent 3 months teaching him. The MORA loon. Know what I learned through all of this? Revenge isn't about destruction. Real revenge is about revelation. It's about teaching people what they had before they lost it. It's about showing them the value of what they took for granted. Marcus didn't lose his company. He didn't lose his deal. He didn't lose his reputation. But he lost his ignorance. He lost the comfortable lie that he could succeed without valuing the people who actually built his success. And that loss? That changed everything. I could have destroyed TechCore. I had the power. I had the leverage. I could have walked away and watched it all collapse. But that wouldn't have taught anyone anything. It would have just been destruction, empty, meaningless. Instead, I made them see me. I made them understand what I'd built. I made them pay what I was worth. And I made them change their systems so the next person wouldn't have to fight like I did. That's revenge that actually matters. Revenge that leaves things better than it found them. Here's what I want you to take from my story. Your value doesn't come from whether other people see it. It comes from the work itself, from the quality, from the care you put into what you build. But that doesn't mean you should stay invisible. That doesn't mean you should accept being undervalued. Know your worth. Document your work. Understand your leverage. And when the time comes, when you've been pushed too far, when you've been disrespected for the last time, Don't destroy, reveal. Show them exactly what they're losing. Make them understand. Make them pay. Make them change. Because the best revenge isn't about hurting people. It's about teaching them. It's about leaving them better than you found them, even if that lesson comes at a cost they'll never forget. 3 weeks after I left TechCore, I accepted the Silverton offer. Not because I needed them, but because Dr. Chen understood something Marcus took 7 years to learn. Great work deserves great respect, and people who build things that matter deserve to be seen. I'm building new systems now, better ones, and this time, I'm not invisible. This time, my name is on the patents. This time, when people ask who built this, they hear my name first. This time, I'm valued from the start. And Marcus, he still runs TechCore, but it's different now. Better. He learned his lesson. He values his technical team. He asks questions. He listens. He changed. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just walked away, if I should have let the whole thing collapse. But then I think about Priya and my old team. I think about the new developers who will work at TechCore and be treated with respect because I fought for that policy change. I think about the culture that's slowly shifting because one person decided to stand up, and I realized this was better. This was right. Because revenge that destroys is temporary, but revenge that teaches, that changes things forever. So if you're out there feeling invisible, feeling undervalued, feeling like your work doesn't matter to the people who profit from it, know this: your work matters. You matter. And when the time comes to stand up to demand what you're worth, to show them what they're losing, don't be afraid, because sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be invisible anymore. Sometimes the best revenge is making them see you. And sometimes the best revenge is teaching them that respect isn't something you give when you're desperate, it's something you should have given all along.